In this mini lecture, we'll discuss the topic of triadic inversion. Triads have 3 notes in them, as you know. This means that we say they have 3 possible positions, or rotations of how those 3 notes appear in space. Of the 3 notes of the C chord, the root, the third, or the fifth could be the bass note, and that just simply means the lowest sounding note of a chord. The effect is dramatically different depending on which of the 3 letter names ends up actually supporting the chord in music. At the far left, I've written a C chord with a low C, and it's in root position, supporting other notes of the C chord spread out above it. There's a lot of C-ness to this chord, and it's not just because there are 2 C's in it, it's because there's so much of a sturdy foundation from this low C. This is considered to be the most stable position of the chord. The second chord, I've written it, it's also a C chord, but it sounds consonant and it sounds major, but it's not quite as stable as the C major chord that started the piece. A little bit more thick, and that's actually not the right word either. It's more stable here and less stable in the second chord with the E in the bass. That's considered to be first inversion. And the third chord shown on the page with a G in the bass, C chord, this is a very unusual arrangement of notes. It's considered very unstable. This is the second inversion chord, and in fact it's so unstable that when you hear this, very often it doesn't even want to be C anymore. It almost wants to be a G chord. So that's the type of chord of inversion that we won't be considering. Pretty much every chord we handle this semester will either be in root position, as at the far left, or in first inversion, like that. And they're both pretty good. The reading talks more about their stability and how they're used in music. Now, the 3 types of inversion have interval numbers associated with them. So, in the case of any C chord, if C is the bass note, putting it in root position, all the other intervals with that chord, E to C is some kind of a third, G to C is some kind of fifth, and we don't really count the unisons or octaves. So all of the notes above that low C are fifths and thirds, the intervals of 5s and 3s. All these notes are 5s and 3s above, which gives us this sort of notation system of 5-3. So another way of talking about a root position chord is calling it a 5-3 chord. If we went to first inversion, all of the other chords above this E, if you'll know, E to C is a different interval. It's a sixth, and E to G is a third. But what's noticeably different in this case is that there's a 6 involved as an interval in a first inversion chord, and all first inversion chords in fact have some kind of 6th in them. And again, we don't really need to actually consider this chord at all because we won't be analyzing them or talking about them. So another way of thinking about root position here, first inversion here, is between 5-3 and 6-3 chords. We'll now compare the sound of root position and first inversion triads. And we've already said that root position is more stable, first inversion less so. Here's an example at left of the first kind. It's quite nice, and it sounds like the melody is done doing what it's going to do. It comes pretty well at rest to scale to Re1. Here's the progression again. So we've arrived on a 1 chord that is inverted, and that's what this little thing is indicating in here. We're dealing with some sort of inverted chord. And the sort of question is that, is this done? No classical composer would end a piece with this inverted 1 chord, or very rarely would they do that. It's more likely they would come to a more conclusive, convincing ending as at right. Sounds like this. I've just rewritten the progression so that it lands on a root position 1 chord with a C in the bass. Right. There's no doubt that this is now just C, and this low root position chord, this low note that supports the C chord, basically is stable and doesn't want to go anywhere. Whereas opposed to this C chord with an E in the bass, sounds like it might have some work left to be done.